Shahana bhavatu, Shahano bhunaktu, Shahabirjam karvavahai, Tejashina badhitamastu, Ma vidvishabhai, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, good evening, students. Now Ishani madam will start the lecture, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So you are host, Ishani.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this screen is visible, I hope.
It is visible.
Okay. So today I thought to continue the class in a little different way. Today I will be the learner and Dharanidharan sir and Prasanna sir, you will be the teachers today. So the topic is validity, which might be you are aware of, and what is there in the types of validity, that is also there in the slides. So I shall go through the slides. I shall show you this. You have access to internet, you have access to Google. So as the topics, you will see the topics, then you may search yourselves in Google if you want any more information, any more clarification, then you will be saying the concepts. Then once you are okay with the concept, like me and Anindita is also there, we will just clear the doubts. So let's see how it goes. It's kind of increase your participation, and at times we feel like we are only giving the lectures kind of a thing, and we don't know how much is going to the receiver's end. So I thought to try this thing today. So let's see. So first we will start with concept of validity. What is validity and what is the difference between reliability and validity? These two are my questions. So one by one, Prasanna and Dharani sir, one by one, you may start with your own understanding.
Validity is if we take an item, for example, we will have to see to what extent that the item is measuring the construct which actually it was designed to measure. That is validity. If an item is measuring the level of stress, we will have to see to what extent it is properly measuring the extent of stress that one particular item. But reliability is if we use the test or use the item to measure a particular construct like stress over a period of time, it must be consistent. Validity is if we are checking if that item is measuring properly. Reliability is if we are checking if that item is measuring properly over a period of time.
Okay, so okay, fine. So validity you are saying is if the item is measuring properly what it is supposed to measure, and reliability is whether it's the item is measuring consistently over the time. So okay, it's not item, we should term this as instrument, or might be a questionnaire, right?
If we combine all the items, it makes a questionnaire.
Okay, fine, thank you. Yes, Prasanna sir.
So I think before something becomes valid, there should be consistency, right? That's what reliability. So for example, put it in our session example, right? So now little you lost the reliability on us because we are not participating. So in this session, whether we are giving an answer or not, that is maybe little valid or not. That's what, but still, whether our answers are reliable or not, like Unless otherwise we give you the right answers consistently for next few sessions, then you may get reliability on this. Then we may get really go that start to think about whether it's a valid, it's making sense actually.
Then your understanding will be valid, right?
Yes, consistently I'm doing the same answer, right answers I'm giving. So yeah, this particular topic maybe I can take it whatever the valid answers has been given as a valid answer. So
okay, here I beg to differ a little.
Hmm.
One instrument can be reliable but might not be valid. So maybe I'm measuring something consistently over a period of time, but I'm not exactly measuring the construct that is I'm supposed to measure. That can happen.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So let me escape from this view. I don't know why I have problem of changing the slides in this full screen view. Just let me escape from this. No, it's not happening. Just give me a little time. Yeah, this is in a sense better. Yeah, so we can see that reliability is about the consistency of a measure and validity is about the accuracy of a measure. Now, validity is the extent to which a test measures and what it claims to measure. Like whatever I am measuring something, a construct. So validity is if I am able to measure that construct accurately or not. And reliability is the consistency about that instrument, that whether I am measuring the same thing over a period of time or not. So now let me ask one question, which way back sir actually asked in one of our sessions. So a person has come to a rail station wearing a wristwatch. Now he is asking a fellow passenger that the time, whether this is 10:20 or not. So now what it will be, reliability or validity of the thing, of this measurement of time? What is trying to understand, the reliability of his wristwatch or the validity?
Validity.
Correct. Okay, so I think reliability and validity, the relationship between these two is now understood. Any questions? Yes, Srishti, Anindita, who is this? Yeah, Srishti, you said something?
No.
Okay. Now, these are types of validity. Content validity, again, this can be divided into three types: phase validity, construct validity, and criterion validity. Again, in construct validity, we have two concepts. One is convergent and one is divergent. And again, in criterion validity, we have two concepts. One is predictive and one is concurrent. So now let's see what these things are. So first thing is content validity. So like I said, you can read this slide, you can search in Google, and you will be the first one to explain this concept to me. So you can take your time, maybe 3-4 minutes,
In the content validity, the content of the questionnaire, the instrument must stick to what it is supposed to measure, and we must see to that the questions items do not deviate or misrepresent any other construct other than what it is supposed to measure as a whole.
Good. Thank you, Dharni. Anyone else?
And again, there is no deviation from that. Suppose I'm using an arithmetical way of testing somebody in exam or something. Is it really that skills is particular grade, like it's 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade? So that questions is what for the 7th grade or 8th grade, rather than any random arithmetic. Is it really valid at doing that work? Maybe that is what I would say from my perspective. Is it testing that grade of quality or whatever the standard they are studying, right? So,
yeah, okay, fine. There is one more example which also you can read. Srishti, any inputs from you?
Nothing in specific sort of item. Whatever we are measuring, all the items should represent whatever we are trying to measure as a whole, and there is not. We should not deviate from what we define the item to be. So it should stick to the definition, and it should cover different dimensions of that particular item.
Okay. Now, this concept is similar to something which we already covered in our previous class. And what is that? That items should measure something, items should not deviate from the ultimate, measuring the ultimate construct. Something in similar lines we read somewhere, right?
Is it associated with internal consistency, reliability?
Very good, Srishti, very good. So this is somehow the concept is similar to internal consistency. Okay, these are like this slide says how to establish or how to examine this content validity. So usually we take experts' judgment or experts' opinion. That is one way. This again, taking experts' judgment or expert opinion on the items, whether these items are measuring the ultimate construct or not, is to some extent similar to phase validity, another concept. But then in case of content validity, we can use statistical analysis as well. So basically finding out the correlation. And from here, it's like we are coming to this internal consistency of the scale, Cronbach's alpha. But there is a little difference also between the concepts of internal consistency and content validity. Now you need to tell me what is the difference, or what do you understand that what could be the difference between content validity and internal consistency. Though these two are similar concepts, but not the same thing. You can search net, you can use your resources, then you can tell me.
The content validity is considers the instrument as a whole, but the internal consistency is takes few items at a time and measures how well the items are efficient in measuring the particular construct.
Okay. Anyone else?
So is it not? Is it? Can we say internal consistency is more of like consistency is the word is being used, so something to do with reliability also.
Something with? Come again,
With the
sir.
reliability of that or that context rather than
Yeah. Internal consistency we found in reliability.
So from that context, I think it is
We found the concept of this alpha or Cronbach's alpha, where
correct.
we were measuring internal consistency through that alpha. Yes.
So we are talking about correlation. So it says for item correlation, we are looking at a particular item and the total score. And for when we consider internal consistency, we see inter-item correlation.
Right. And when we consider content validity, that time?
It is with the item and the overall score of it. It's not necessary that within item correlation be high.
Yeah. And another thing is this Cronbach's alpha or internal consistency depends on the number of items in my scale. When the number of items is high, the internal consistency will be higher. But in case of content validity, there is no such thing. It's precisely whether my items overall are measuring the ultimate construct or not. Content validity deals with that thing. So it can be like if a content validity can be same for a 5-item scale or a 105-item scale, we can say. But in case of this internal consistency or Cronbach's alpha, when the number of items are more, so the value of alpha will be higher. That is another difference. But obviously, from Cronbach's alpha, we can, the Cronbach's alpha indicates whether this instrument, whether this scale will have content validity or not. So usually a high value of Cronbach's alpha indicates that the content validity will be high. So the next concept is phase validity. So again, I would like you to
So before you go
explain.
further, I just got
Yeah.
lost here. See, the
Yeah,
internal
sure.
consistency is actually validates your data, right? Whether there is a homogeneity or not, something like that. Correct. Using
Right.
Cronbach's alpha.
Validates your data. What do you mean by data here?
No, whether you may have a set of data sets or whatever things. So whether there is a relationship or not, that's what I'm trying to say. So that
so answer this question, Nishani ma'am.
Yeah, please.
So essentially, Prasanna sir, what our assumption is here is that we are going to establish some kind of idea towards how we are constructing the items in the first place. So we will already have an idea whether our items are going to measure the construct that we want to measure or not. So if we are finding a lot of internal consistency that is high, it in turn means that they're all measuring one thing. So if we are confident that the content of our items are measuring the construct and we have a high internal consistency as well, it in turn implies that we have a really good validity of the measure. Does that make sense, sir?
I got that. See, that's what the primarily we are looking after the internal consistency.
Yeah.
Ahead of the time, you know that whether this data set will work or not, you have to throw this away. Correct.
It's
from
not about the data set at all, sir.
Yeah, that's what.
About the
Yeah.
item.
Anindita, go ahead.
The items are the things that we're trying to understand the nature of. The data set is going to help us understand the nature of the items. The data set has nothing to do with your previously understood construct.
when you say, okay, what is your context of data set?
So with regard to any pilot study that we're doing to understand this, our data set is just going to be a representation of the population. That's all. We're not going to expect anything from the scores based on the data collection methodology or the data set that we are receiving from the samples. That will not be anywhere related to the scores that we're trying to understand. So what we are essentially focusing on is that these concepts that we're trying to measure must be measured in a good manner. So what we're essentially trying to get an understanding of from the data set is only the nature of the items and not a understanding of the data set per se that we're getting from the samples.
But unless, okay.
They do influence each other, yes.
Yeah.
But
So-
primarily how we are using statistics here is to understand the items and not the nature of the sample.
I agree.
So,
See,
sir,
item,
yeah, let me add a little here. So, sir, precisely when we say data set, so what we are thinking or what is our understanding is the numbers or the ratings given by the sample or by the participants, right? So those ratings or those numbers, we are using those rating or those numbers for certain statistical calculations. Say for Cronbach's alpha, we are calculating. So the inputs are from that data set, which is data set. By data set, I mean the numbers or the ratings that I am getting from my sample or from the participants. Then what I am trying to measure? I am trying to measure whether my instrument is reliable and valid or not. So I'm trying to measure something about my item. That's what I think Anindita was also trying to say, that so we are getting support or we are getting help from the data set, but my intention is to understand whether or to measure whether my instrument, my items are reliable and valid or not, right?
but
Is it
again,
all right if I give it a try, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Prasna, so idea is, say, for instance, you're trying to measure depression. So we'll try and understand what it means to have a depression, and we'll draw out items. So when each of those items correlate with each other, it says we are measuring depression correctly. And if it is
I think he's
able
gotten
to,
that point correctly. I think he's trying to clarify something else. So would you like to clarify what you are trying to understand here?
Yeah, sure.
thank you. See, my context was whether, okay, again, I'll put this way, right? My concept of data set here is whether it is sample. I have an instrument, okay? All these young, whatever, a lot of instruments are there, been proven and everything. So you have questions there and everything, all that stuff. But when you wanted to validate that internal consistency of that questionnaire or whatever survey you are giving that, it is actually, it's going to tap upon your sample only, right? Some of the samples tap up and give you the outcome of that, what is happening. So then only you are getting a pattern or something that is working or not. So my question here is, that sample, whatever I'm using to generate that information so that I can derive the, first, let's say, first time I'm publishing this questionnaire or something like that, I'm getting some internal consistency and everything. Then again, second time issuing that. So the samples where I'm issuing is going to play the role, right? That's what I call it data set. So the data set where I am playing around is going to play me the consistency of this. So let's say gender or I don't know, something, it can be anything, right? So if I move it around, automatically is working or not. That is what I'm going to check. Let's say 5 times, 10 times, whatever the times and everything. So my primary question here is how really this internal consistency is proving when I am playing around with these samples. So, or is it as simple as that? Like, or keep it simple. Hey, don't worry about too much about it. Keep your samples, and this, maybe you don't need to go too much worry about a lot of samples. Have a segmentation samples, test out that, and make sure that the first tool is working. Then you worry about whether you wanted to go beyond or something, or like you wanted to categorize more by gender or age or something like that. Something like that. That's what I wanted to understand.
Here's the catch, sir. I absolutely understand your question. It's a very good question. And I think we've been dealing with this question for a few classes already. The thing with sampling is that you always assume that you're going to get a representative sample. And if you are ensuring that your sampling methodology is in such a way that you are getting a representative sample, then your variability that will happen due to various sampling methodology or your various characteristics of your sample is going to get automatically controlled because you are getting a representative sample. A representative sample is going to encapsulate the entire nature of the population regardless of who is comprising that representative sample.
Yeah, and
That makes sense.
yeah, and my only thing was that, sir, what I wanted to say, that is that these data points or the data which we are collecting, those are helping me here in this case of while discussing validity and reliability. Those data is helping me to measure something, whether my scale or my instrument is valid or reliable or not. So we are ultimately measuring items with the help of those data inputs. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Okay.
So just a little addition. So if we do find differences based on the samples that we are finding, and we do find differences based on maybe gender or age groups or anything like that, it just gives us a conclusion that what your items are measuring is not applicable to those other special populations. It may apply to one population around the entire lot, maybe not the rest of it. So if your questionnaire or your items are applicable to, let's say, it's measuring with really good internal consistency with men, then we need to work on it, whether we can change these items and make a completely different female form. For example, we have a few scales that have male form and female form. So if that is the case, is there something that we can do with regard to approaching the scale in that manner? That is an area that we can think about. So if we do have differences based on the age, then we can construct our tools in such a way that we can differentiate the norms based on age and not just on the items. So we can test it out with different populations, of course, based on such demographic details for sure. But if we are looking at a generalized test, we are going to look at a representative sample.
So, Anindita, that's my point of
Yeah,
also,
that's,
right?
that's,
representative sample.
That's what you also saying.
Yes.
Right?
Representative sample, what has been is, see, okay, I put it this way, right? I'm from a pharma industry primarily. So when a clinical trial happens, so when a medicine is being generated, they will try to solve some problem in particular molecules or something like that.
Of course.
But when it's happening, they are saying that there is something else is happening, side impact. Okay.
Yeah.
The great example here is that the Viagra medicine is the great example, right? It was purpose for something else, but they found something else and they started selling it. Okay. So I'm trying to correlate my understanding on a generalized whatever I got in the industry. So if I wanted to validate my tool, I'll keep trying on the representative sample, whatever I have. If I get what I wanted, I'll continue to do that. If I don't get it, maybe I will little tweak my questionnaire or like tweak my sample such a way that it meets the purpose.
You don't tweak the sample, so that's what I'm saying. So if you do have an obvious error with the sample, then we make it error free. If your sampling is good enough at the very beginning, let's say you have done random sampling, let's say you've done a representative sampling for all the times, and you still find such a difference existing with your tool, that it means that your items have to be changed.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing. I think Prasanna sir also wanted to say, like, either there is a problem with the sample or there is a problem
Yeah.
with the items.
That is an
Fine.
accurate understanding.
Yeah, so these items might be good for some other sample, or this sample, for this sample might be you need to construct new items, right?
Okay, got it.
Okay.
He
Good.
started enjoying
if
these
you are
sessions, guys. Thank you.
Actually, I am also enjoying today.
I think if you're interested in carrying on this discussion later as well, I think that my WhatsApp is open to you. You can text me. I can get back to you at any time.
No, see, this is a problem, right? So, why I'm specifically asking this question, Anindita, so I closely work with CFOs, okay? So when we are giving a solutioning, pitching and everything, right, we blindly say that follow this. And they will come back with a question saying that, how do I trust this? Okay.
Of course, we really appreciate your questions here, sir. I think it's making all of us think and we're getting some kind of discussions out of it as well.
Yeah. So that's the
Very
reason I'm
true,
trying to
very
get an
true.
answer so that I'll go back to my CFOs and tell that, did you do this? At least I'll confuse him and move around. That's
Of course, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah. Okay, so our next concept is phase validity. So this is the easiest or weakest form, it is said. So again, I would like any one of you to explain this.
It is like seeing the first glance of the test and trying to get a sense of what if it is measuring what it is supposed to measure.
Very true. And usually the experts are being approached for this. So I will not spend much time on this. Since I said this is the basic form or say the weakest form, usually, I mean, this is a very primitive form, we can say. So we'll move towards the next next topic. Okay, this is our procedure for establishing phase validity. As I said, usually the experts are approached for this. So then we will move towards the next concept, which is construct validity. This is a pretty long slide with many things written. So you can either read this or maybe you can just search through Google and you can try to explain the concept.
See, honestly, Google is somewhat, I'm saying that it's just changing the words and again giving the same definition for everything. So that's what I can sense. Sorry to say this.
No. I mean, it's true. And definition anyway cannot be different, right?
No, Ishani, what I was saying is every question you are asking, the constructor, phase validity, whatever, if you Google it, right, somewhat I feel that just you replace us with some vocabulary word, then it's giving the same definition.
Okay. Okay, I will stop saying this. Yes. So anyone?
It is almost same like it is almost same like the definition of validity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is almost the same like the definition of validity. And if, for example, if we take a reliability to be a construct in psychology, and we have to see by through this construct validity that how much the questions are measuring, to what extent the questions are measuring the particular given construct of the questionnaire.
Yeah, true. I would just like to ask you people to go through this example. So it's basically saying we can, compare this. We can take two established tests and maybe those two can be administered. And if we have the high correlation between results, so we'll find that there is construct validity. So they are using a term overlapping constructs. So those two tests should have similar variables.
If we are giving it two questionnaires that measure the same construct, for example, if you're measuring stress with using two questionnaires
Right.
from the same person, if one questionnaire is saying that they have a moderate stress, another questionnaire is saying they are having a high stress, how do we interpret?
Okay, so then, so this is usually done when I'm trying to develop my own tool. So suppose in my tool and in that the already established one, so both these measurement tools are having similar construct or similar variables, but then there is no correlation. So I'm administering these two sets to measurement tools on same sample, but there is no correlation between the results. Then obviously I will consider that my scale or my instrument is not having construct validity.
Okay.
In this example itself, this depression BDI example itself.
Yeah, so for your more convenience, I can show you this. This is BDI. And
no, the question here is, unless otherwise the question has been answered, we don't know whether that person is having depression or not depression, right? So why that example says that people without depression, how they feel with depression, if there is a difference. So I'm not clear on that example.
No, so scores of people. So we are getting two scores from two scales and comparing that.
So what this example is essentially telling us is that we are having an idea of the sample already. So there is one part of the sample that has been diagnosed with issues like depression, because that's what we're considering here, that clearly has some, issues like sadness, consistent sadness, there is fatigue, there is all of these other symptoms associated with depression that we've already known. And then there's this other part of the sample that does not have those symptoms present. So we are going to administer this BDI to both these groups. And our assumption is going to be that if our tool is valid with regard to the construct, we're going to get higher scores amongst those who have these symptoms of depression. So that is what it's saying here. So if it does not get any difference in the scores between those who have depression and those who do not, then clearly your tool is not measuring what it's supposed to. That's the essential understanding here. So we already have an understanding with the sample that they have this issue, they have the symptoms of depression, and we're seeing whether our tool is actually measuring it that way.
But it's like a student is saying that everything is working, then teacher comes and validate whether really it works. So teacher knows what to really test.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
True. So now in construct validity, again, we have two concepts. One is convergent and another is divergent. I will show you the slides for divergent validity
But
also.
means this convergent does means like, is it right way to say, or is it right to say something is already established, and if I am introducing something new, similar, so I can use that as a base and do this, so that both are giving the same similar outcomes, so that mine is also as good as that one. Is that right understanding?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, and then we have a concept of this divergent validity.
Can one of you give us an example similar to the ones that we've been seeing so far? Let's say a depression scale itself. How would we use divergent validity with a depression scale? What are we going to use it with?
So is it something? How to put this? There is a
Please go ahead, sir.
particular segment or particular part of my test is deviated from what the other test is doing. So that's what I'm trying to prove. That's what I'm divergent. Otherwise, maybe 60-70% is almost similar, but the 30% is what I'm trying to bring it difference. Is it the right word to say?
Almost. I think we need a little bit more clarity on that. Ma'am, can you go back on that slide? Can we see the divergent validity slide?
Yes.
Slide didn't pop. Yeah, now it came.
Just read into the definition once, sir, and let's think on it together.
Okay. The 30% is completely different from what is there already. Like this. I don't know anything there.
That's all right, sir. Good try on that. So essentially what we can think about is that the symptoms of depression can sometimes be overlapped with symptoms of anxiety. For example, insomnia or hypersomnia, weight loss and weight gain. So with regard to this, when we are constructing a questionnaire, particularly for depression, we need to ensure that it does not measure anxiety. So therefore, we use divergent validity in such a way that we administer both tools of depression and a tool that measures anxiety, and see how far these two tools are correlating to each other with regard to the items scoring. So if we are seeing that a lot of these scores that we are seeing in depression is correlating very highly with a lot of scores in anxiety, this is just a very simple example. We need to go into depth with regard to actually doing this. But if we are seeing that the correlation is very high between the tool that you are constructing for depression and an already existing anxiety scale, then we need to ensure that your tool does not measure anxiety. So this correlation should be as minimal as possible to ensure that it is not measuring anxiety. So divergent validity is where this correlation is close to 0. In all other areas of validity, we are expecting higher scores of correlation. But in divergent validity, we are expecting the lowest score of correlation between the two tools. I hope that made sense.
But as you just mentioned, right? So again, the characteristics of this anxiety and depression
Yeah.
To some extent it's aligned. So those areas will still correlated, right? The only this
Yes.
part only is
So
not correlated.
we already have an idea about how much correlation we can expect, because there's already studies done, there's already ideas around that. So we can expect a correlation up till that level. If it is beyond that, then we may have to consider rewording our items in such a way, or replacing our items in such a way. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So Anandita, how much of a correlation is allowed?
That we need to look into based on the empirical evidence that is already. So if we are going to look into the variables that already have some kind of link with each other, for example, like depression and anxiety, we need to look into the empirical evidence suggesting how much is an acceptable amount of correlation.
All right.
Right.
So
and
there is no like a set scale that we can have.
But our aim is to ensure that it is the lowest possible amount of correlation.
Okay, so we are trying to identify those unique characteristics of something that we're trying to measure.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Great. So another example can be when we are trying to measure this customer satisfaction and customer delight. So might be similar to some extent, but then we need to add certain new items as well. Otherwise, there is no need to measure customer delight at all if we are measuring the same thing, such as customer satisfaction. So when I'm trying to measure something new, then I should look into the matter that it should be divergent. I mean, there should be a divergent validity as well. Great. So let's move on to the
wild
next
question.
thing. Yeah, please,
so
sir.
if it is convergent validity, divergent validity, kind of it's little contradicting to each other, right? So does it mean that convergent validity, what we are trying to really achieve here is between two questionnaires, internal consistency between the two questions, is the right way to say?
Come again, sir.
No, are we trying to achieve convergent validity? We are trying to say that the questionnaire is doing the same job. Okay, whatever you are having, I am having the same job. It's finally meeting the purpose and everything. So somewhere you are trying to say that internal consistency between these two questionnaires we are trying to achieve is what? Convergent validity, or it's a over confusing statement?
Kind of over
Internal
confusing.
consistency is not the right word to use here, because we have two different tools. But if you are going to consider it as an extension of the previously existing tool, then we can use the word internal consistency. Internal consistency is only used as a terminology when we're talking about one single tool and the items amongst that very tool. Here we have two entire different tools. So therefore, we only use the word correlation. It's a statistical word that will help us identify. So if we are going to read the word internal consistency or correlation in a research paper, apart from what we're trying to do, we'll be able to understand what is actually happening there. That's the entire point of all of these terminology. It gives us a clear idea. So there's nothing wrong with saying internal consistency if you're going to put it as one single questionnaire. But the terminology here is correlation because there are two different tools. That's all.
Got it.
Anandita, my question here is then, if another tool is already measuring what you have constructed, then what's the point of the new tool?
Yeah, so let me
you may be constructing it for a completely different population, number one. Because whatever you had as those tools standardized by Western population may not be applicable for us. Those items have to be reconstructed, in which case we need to check the validity again. And secondly, may not be there for a particular age group or maybe a special population.
Gender-wise,
Yes, gender-wise, special population. There are various things that we need to check. And maybe even a language, if you're translating a tool also, you need to check the validity.
Okay.
So for all of these
economic strata, so there also like things will be different, right?
So just let me know if my understanding is right. So we are trying to ensure that to the population or the sample that we are trying to administer the tool, they are able to interpret those questions in the same manner as a tool measuring a similar thing for a different population.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So this, then we have criterion
Ma'am, I think
validity.
time is up. Can we cover
Yeah,
this
so
in the next
maybe
class?
we can just this criterion validity, one concept is left. We will cover this in the next class. And thank you all. Today's class was really interesting. I must say, thanks to Srishti, Dharni Dharan, Prasanna sir, everyone, Anindita also. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vishali, ma'am.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so sir, if you are there, I don't know, sir. Oh, sir is not there. Okay, let's end the class then. Okay, good night all.